Hello and welcome to another panel discussion from Manifest Media. Today we're going to be talking about HCP marketing strategy or healthcare professional marketing strategy, a topic that's been very close to my heart, and we've got two very seasoned and strategic marketing folks who also focus on HCPs, Mayur and Deep. Dr. Mayur Shah has been a practicing doctor for 3 years and about 17 years in the pharma and healthcare professional marketing industry with MSD and Sanofi. Spent a lot of his career in diabetes, but also in vaccines, areas where HCPs play a very strong role, but one of the roles, and I found that very interesting, exactly what I found interesting about Deep's profile. Deep is again a couple of decades of marketing experience in pharma and consumer healthcare marketing industries. More consumer healthcare with HCP focus right now with Pfizer, Danone, and currently Danone. So let's get into the thick of things. I think the first question is a hard question. You've seen HCP and pharma marketing close up, both of you. Do you think we are strategic enough in this industry from a marketing perspective or not?
So pharma industry, and so I think first is I think kudos to them, still growing double-digit steady year on year despite all the external context. So having said that, coming to a question without mincing words, I would say no. Pharma marketers are not as strategic enough as they should be. So that's the part of it. But second is giving them some benefit of doubt. I think it's the way the industry is structured and the way it's set up, the context, hyper fragmented, a lot of competition, the push on immediate business, and hence strategy takes a backseat and it's all about execution excellence. So that's where these folks are. But I think that gives an opportunity for candidates in the pharma marketing to really resist this temptation of just focusing on execution, even if it's personal selling, right? Think of long-term brand building, and I think that strategy should flow in.
Absolutely. Mayur?
So I tend to agree with Deep to an extent. We are talking about 3,000 pharma registered companies. We are talking about 60,000 brands which are registered and approved by DCGI. So you would have a spectrum of marketing folks in the pharma industry. And when you look at those, you might also color that with a multinational versus Indian, and that tends to bring a lot of diffusion, if I can say, and you will see a spectrum. So that's not something that is more intentional, but also driven by a lot of market forces. So if I can give you an example, 2014 was the first time UCPMP code actually came in, and then we have seen these codes being revised. So there is a restriction, there is a guidance, and now when we see there are other policies which are coming up, you talk about PMJ, so new stakeholders have come. So what I'm trying to get at is that a lot of strategy is driven also by the response to the market, and Indian markets have been known by the speed to action. So a lot of times in the game of gaining speed to action, strategy might seem like getting a miss, but still I feel that there's a spectrum and we cannot paint the whole canvas as black and white, but it's more about evolving. And I always see the optimism there, and that's where I feel that HCP marketing is started becoming more strategic in nature, because otherwise you would become extinct. But at the same time, is there a room to improve, as Deep mentioned? 100%. So I just want to give you that context, because if I look at strategy and tactical execution, anything without tactics, only strategy is a slow path to victory, as someone said, right? But tactics without strategy means you are declaring the noise before the war, and then the whole war goes by.
No, very well said. I think there is a lot of diversity in this industry, but there are some gaps, and therefore those are the ones that we should dive deeper into, and hopefully we get learnings for everyone watching us today. Any gaps that come to mind strategically, any big ones, and we'll pick them up one by one and talk a little bit more about them.
Are we looking at the right market? Are we defining the market correctly? Right from there to doing a detailed situation analysis. I think the first part is where I see a lot of gap in the process, and then do we have the right decision making process mapped out? Because a lot of times the the key difference between India and the West, I see a lot of reliance on the kind of experience or instinct, and a little bit of more reliance is required in terms of insights, mining, etc., which to an extent I feel we can do much better, and the investments can be much better there to have a solid evidence-based decision making. So if we are able to do that bit well, your foundation is strong, and from that is where I feel that we can improve a lot. What do you feel?
So definitely, and I think so ultimately it's marketing strategy, right? And right from the days of Kotler, when all of us would have studied to here, right? It starts essentials, right? Segmenting, targeting, positioning, differentiation. All that is gospel truth, will not change. Only the nuances might happen, and maybe there are newer jargons to it, right? But I think those are the elements. It should be close at the heart. And I think the first one, if it does begin, one is definition of the market, but in this case, it's the customer sort of identification. What we've learned over the years, we do stop at demographic segmentation. Can we go beyond and go look at psychographic segmentation, which is much more richer? A classic example, even within pediatricians, right? If we take that as a specialty. So one is the demographics. You split that, where do they practice? What's been their years of experience, what has been their consulting fees, the type of clientele. Okay, that's demographics. But then you come to psychographics. What's their key motto in life? What do they really look out for, right? What are the key drivers? What do they expect? The rep sort of medical rep attributes, and how do they expect to be engaged? Therefore, your offerings and the way you approach would be really different, and this will come about by psychographic segmentation, which I believe is not done very often. But giving benefit of doubt, we are evolving, but there is a scope, and I think that's the first piece.
I think both of these are great call outs.
So I had one point, and to build on psychographic segmentation, because honestly, you'd be surprised that around 17, 18 years back in Kotler, segmentation was defined into demographic, geographic and psychographic. There was a theoretical mention about it, but what I see right now is a far more evolution on that with digital coming in, because digital helps you to capture real-time understanding of what a physician is really interested in, what is his thinking, what is his attitude, and even not just clinic based or corporate hospital based, but even if he's sitting anywhere within the clinics or even within the corporate hospitals, the kind of psychography in terms of what we have realized is there are physicians who want to be seen as thinkers, there are physicians who want to be seen as achievers. I mean, they need to be the first in terms of trying, they need to be ahead of the curve, etc. And there are physicians who are experiencers. So for them, experience comes first, and that becomes the key driver. So how the decision making evolves beyond the scientific rationale which the brand brings in, but there's also this kind of psychographic segmentation which helps in the way how we approach, because HCP now is far more omni-channel than we think, and that with the digital revolution which happened in India with this whole pre-COVID, COVID era, I think that has far more equipped pharma now to actually conduct that kind of segmentation and leverage that to make the marketing strategies more sharpened, if I can say that to your point.
No, definitely. And I think I'm just picking up a couple of words and then we go to the next point that you want, Praful. What we've observed is, there are, during research, typically the way we do it, right, there are stated responses and then there are derived responses. And so stated, many people will say yes, yes, yes. But when they do stuff, and which you see from their digital footprint, you might be surprised, oh, this is something different, which is a derived response. And hence your psychographic will be a culmination of both of these, and I just wanted to put that as a perspective.
The other interesting thing I want to touch upon is in terms of the marketing task, right? As someone who's been a client and now an agency, I get a lot of briefs, and the briefs, in a way, communication briefs, are like where the marketing strategy ends and then the role of the communication agency starts out there. And the very first part of the brief is just, what is the marketing objective? And we get a lot of folks telling us on marketing objective that, I want to grow the brand by so much, I want to grow my market share by so much. What do you all feel about marketing tasks, communication tasks? and how we define them as an industry. Are we doing enough? What's a good way to do it?
Coming from a client brief, right? We expect, the agency should figure it out, but it starts from the brief, right? And the clarity, right? And how sharp and precise are you? Which is the task map, right? Marketing task map. You say, I want to grow business by X, by Y. Okay, so but that's not a marketing objective. What's the TG? What's the current behavior and the underlying current attitude? What's the desired behavior and the underlying desired attitude? And a big piece in this epicenter, which I would say is the insights piece. Really simple looking, but when you put pen to paper, you realize how difficult it is, because you really need to be clear in your mind exactly. First of all, you need to know what exactly the customer, whether it's HCP, consumer, mother, whoever, is actually feeling and believing. So again, and I think we'll come to that point, one which is what do you observe, which is the behavior, but what do they feel and believe, which is the, the why part of it. But when you dig deeper, the insight part, the deep truth. So unless you know that, you will not be able to put the task map together. You have to be, precise. That's when, the magic for the agency would start, right? If you put this together. Over to you, Mayur.
I completely agree to that fact that how can we make it crystal clear, okay? And to that point, I think there are three things. How do you convert a business vision into a strategic objective or a strategic imperative? How do you convert a strategic imperative to a marketing tactic? What KPIs are you trying to look at? To me, a clear marketing brief is an ideal scenario. While we have been doing pen and paper to it, but then I have seen that it's the iterations that go through which has a lot of value, and the kind of conversations and the KPI measurements that we bring on board that leads to a successful marketing campaign. Because many times I've seen that we have planned a marketing campaign. Initially we started with something with an objective, but then as we start refining, we get to a more beautiful product, if I can say that.
Now the tough question for you guys, inciting. Inciting something which is an art, and while I give an easy answer to assessing it, it's far tough to mine for insights, and I think it's one of the biggest parts of strategy, like you're both touched upon right now. So let's talk more about that, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is one topic which is very close to my heart, because everything lies on what kind of insights and what kind of your executive judgment then you're applying. That's the first thing which I keep ensuring that, am I trying to know what I know more? Is it a validation exercise, or is it something to genuinely know what I don't know? And for this, something which has helped me is a cross-functional team. Okay, and of course then your marketing agency or your advertising agency helps build on that. I think there are experts in the industry who can do that task for you, but as a marketeer, this would be the preliminary thing that I feel that try to look out for things which you don't know and identify those and try to mine those insights.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad, I think insights would be close to all marketers. It's about the 5 whys, right? I've seen umpteen examples where we see observations, we see data, and we coin, oh, this is insight, which is not. That's only an observation, that's only a data point, right? That's not the insight, that's the what about it, right? Then there are the whys, the feel, and the understanding. And then once it's like peeling an onion, as you keep peeling, and maybe so why, so what, so why. Maybe after the 5th why is where you will actually stumble upon the insight. And so hence, and a very analogy of pharma, many times the doctors we just treat the symptoms, right, which is the observation and data. We don't treat the underlying cause, and which is actually the insight. So, and for an insight to be actually, to be true, it's real, relevant, it should resonate when told to the customer, and last, it should have a tension point which when acted will react, right? It should have a desirable reaction to it. So that's, an insight, from, my perspective. And for that, I think what you said, it has to be a very, very intimate, close understanding of the customer, right? It's empathizing. We use the word empathizing very loosely, but it is actually understanding what they are going through, what they are feeling through. And that's where you get the insight from.
I think the whole game, if you have to lay out, is on, have you plotted the journey well? The consumer journey or the customer journey? Do I really know the drivers, the barriers, the belief the motivators, and then once you plot those and then you understand that I do not know why this is happening, why a customer is behaving like this, that sparks that kind of an insight. That's one. And second is, once you do that whole journey, you realize that what are the moments that matter during that whole consumer journey. And unless and until you have the answer of the entire journey, your insight mining is still not complete. So I was just trying to add to that part, that I really agree on the point which he brought about actionable insights and how to scull that out.
If any of you have examples of times when you went deeper and pulled out an insight, without talking about brands, etc., would be great to hear, because I think that's going to be a big learning for the folks watching us right now.
So I have one example. In my past experience, there was time when we were trying to understand that there were vaccines which had different number of doses, and it was important for us to know that why a particular patient or a consumer, so to say, when it comes to vaccines, when a doctor is more comfortable prescribing an X number of doses versus a Y number of doses, and we were trying to try to solve that puzzle, that why is that we are seeing a resistance to get more number of doses. Initially we hit a roadblock, seeing that why the HCPs are not really, when there's a rationale, why are they not going ahead with the recommendation what's available. When we started going deeper, the final eureka came from a consumer insight, and which was like, मेरी फाइल में तो नहीं लिखा है, okay, and there, I mean, for the consumer, it is the file and the doctor. That's the truth. So then we realized, when the doctor is still telling, it's still not mentioned on the file, and that was a eureka. So probably it's also sometimes from places which we don't expect. And then there you get insights from, and that really turns the whole trajectory of the brand.
Yeah, and I think for that you really have to be open, right? To look around, to be open to stuff that's happening everywhere. First of all, acknowledge I don't know, right? And I really picked that up from this conversation so far. Coming to certain examples, a few of them. And again, I would like to delve on symptom versus actually their insight, right? Data observation versus an insight, right? So again, one of the earlier portfolios that I was managing, it had stakeholders both at the HCP as well as consumer, right? And it's a brand that can be advertised but has a HCP component as well. So again, there were marketeers, there was a team on medical marketing as well as consumer marketing. Now what happens is, both look at data, both look at different data sets, come up with their hypothesis, and then say, yes, this is right. So the medical marketing saw, okay, this category is written a lot when the child is sick, when they have infection, and so why not position as a co-prescription to antibiotics, a nutrition supplement as a co-prescription to antibiotics. So that was the basis of the data. The consumer marketing, there's a lot of picky eating going on, moms are really worried, and they want to give something to their kid, and so let's go at this. So when I realized the brand was actually talking two different things to two different audiences who are actually going to talk to each other later, right, at the clinic. And it didn't stand for the brand. It didn't stand at the integrated communication that we speak of. It didn't stand. And according to me, again, these were not insights. These were just symptoms. The real insight, when we dig, and it's a classic example that it's a consumer, whether practicing doctor, whether mother, whether the shopper. The real insight is, if the kid ain't growing, it's like a reflection on my care and my supervision, right? And so it's my report card if the kid ain't growing as per the milestone. So that's the stuff, and that's when you really harp upon that. You start early, and you intervene early so that this won't happen, and that's the kid will grow as per the curve. Now that cuts very strongly with the doctor, cuts very strongly with the mother. It is integrated enough. It stands for the brand, and that's I'm quite proud that we actually got that done. We changed things that were going on for many years, and obviously the brand really grew much faster.
And in fact, the thing that both of you have touched upon is very interesting, because in HCP marketing strategy, this is one of the most important aspects, that you have to study the patient or the consumer along with the HCP, right? The HCP is often the decision maker. The payer and the user is the patient or the consumer, and sometimes they drive compliance, but they also drive the HCP's thinking. So love that about this, and it's something that we often struggle with the most. Where does the insight come from? Sometimes the HCP insight is coming from the consumer.
So Praful, while you are talking about HCP and consumer, that's one axis, that's more out of pocket, right? But I also want to draw your attention that there is a lot of focus that has now come in the public market space. And what has been evolved now, if you look at the whole stakeholder cycles, it's not just the HCP and the consumer. So it's in fact the 5 Ps now which has been very, currently established, that we need to look at all of those, because it can be the physician, it can be the patient, it can be the payer, it can be the policymaker, and it can also be the provider. A lot of times it's the nurse or the kind of support staff, which is the provider, brings in a lot of valuable insights which sometimes we miss. And when we are looking at whole spectrum of brands, these 5 Ps at least give you a real-time check that whether have you tried to seek those insights from these stakeholders. So for me also, that stakeholder mapping is equally important when we think about insight mining. So I thought I'll bring that perspective.
Absolutely, and it's a big part of the strategy for certain. So which brings us to our next question, brand identity. This is something that I find 2 schools of thoughts in the pharma or the HCP marketing industry. One is on one side, folks that say that it's too theoretical, do we really need that, etc. And on the other side, you have folks that say no, if you don't have it, that's why we have schizophrenic communication. The brand campaign looks completely different in cycle 1 versus cycle 2. So where do you all stand on that?
So about brand identity and communication, I definitely feel that there needs to be a consistency, and which is something which, if you have an agency who is long-term partnered with you, they really do a good check of it. In fact, from that lens, I think the whole brand identity piece can be really taken care of. But what I definitely see is the content marketing part, and which is where we see a lot of difference between, say, Q1 versus Q2, and then sometimes we are talking, are we really staying closer to the brand promise? That's something also is the other element. So one is brand identity, not just through the visuals, but also the content that we are talking and the way we are, capsulating it closer to the brand promise. That's something which I see at times a gap.
So identity and personality is how does the brand come across, right? And it is built with being boringly consistent. I think the other piece is obviously content, the visual treatment, being consistent, and what we call something like distinct brand assets, DBAs, and that's also all 360 touch points wherever it's possible. Pharma gives as an opportunity which other industries may not, because of the personal selling thing. It's been done through an MR. We can make the communication much more come alive beyond just paper, pen and things like that. You have models, you can demonstrate, you can make it experiential. If you have a concept of gentle, there are so many ways of showing gentle, right? If you have a concept of absorption, and again you get into so many gimmicky routes, but that sticks. And so when all of this is reinforced and you have a single-minded brand promise or a brand message, all these touch points are convoluted towards it, is where you have a strong identity.
Absolutely. And like you said, the medical rep is a living being that delivers the message, and therefore personality can actually be used a lot better on the brand, and we don't end up doing enough on that. Brings me to the last question, which is that in India we operate in pretty much a branded generic market, and therefore it's a very commoditized market where we are marketing one of 400 brands of the same molecule, and which are the ways, strategic, tactical or otherwise, that we can use to stand out?
Yeah, and it's I would say really fun, exciting, a roller coaster ride. Being in a space, in the India, the true Bharat, right? You have 400 generics operating. You have but in that space, how do you build brands within this given space? I've been really fortunate. I have taken this roller coaster a few times in my career so far, and one of them, a very simple antibiotic used profusely for respiratory tract infections and so on. Brands available at 1/4 the price, and all sorts of trade practices happening. Is the place where we were as a innovative brand, but losing market share. Now, despite all this reality, you can't lose share, right? And so the key thing, apart from a lot of other things in terms of branding, being have a personality, having research, having efficacy, but something had to be done so that the experts don't get swayed away, right? And that's where a campaign that we did, and I'm so proud that campaign, despite last 8 years, is still on. When I was on a brand versus now, so that talk about, and the campaign was very simple. It's about talking about responsible antibiotic adherence. We spoke of something called Take Charge, which was for doctors, which was for patients in the waiting area, for consumers. We actually went and said, doctors, don't prescribe antibiotics until required. Don't prescribe. And they were shocked. I mean, all reps said, please prescribe. We were saying, don't. If it's not required, don't prescribe. And there were various facets about it, which is compliance, which is the right weight of diagnosis and hence which one to be used and things like that. But the crux of it was, and then obviously communication, patient education, awareness and things like that. But the crux was that actually, swayed the needle. Plus then you build, access. Obviously it's not only one thing that works, so build access. And there is, the might that pharma needs, right? Feet on street. Partnered a co-marketing initiative, with another listed company. Overnight, got access to 1 lakh new specialty doctors talking our brand. So yeah, these are the few things, which despite these generics we actually gained share. It became the biggest brand in the industry, even beating, these cough syrups, right? Which are usually the bigger ones, or the human mixtards of the place. So that's one. Which I did personally, but since we have some time, I would want to quote another one which I really respect, and I was there, being fortunate as a co-brand manager for that, is in the space of thyroxine or thyroid, hypothyroidism, right? Back then, pretty, under, below the wraps, not many people know about it. Already 4-5 brands, companies operating, the biggies already operating there. Very shant market, nothing happening there much. Herein comes a brand, a company with a mission in mind, that, and I think therefore it begins from the purpose, right? If the purpose was how do we improve the quality of lives, and genuine purpose of quality of life of patients who are suffering from hypothyroidism. The biggest issue was people don't know that they're suffering from hypothyroidism, and there are various ways in which it manifests. Hair loss, unexplained weight gain, dry skin. And for all of this, you never think it could be a hormonal back there in your thyroid. People do various things, right? Cosmetics, doctors, pills, and so on. So there came this, brand with a mission, a purpose of, quality of life for, hypothyroid patients. Began right from, and already brands are available. I'm doing nothing much about it. Talking about communication, this is an existing, need. It's an underdiagnosed space. Please look at it, from communication to patient awareness to PR. So this is what usually people do, right? Which is creating awareness, but being really serious about it, which is actually subsidizing the diagnosis and providing that, and actually pushing the doctor and the patient. You have to get it tested, which is subsidizing, partnering with a lab, or with all India presence, providing vouchers and coupons. Go get tested, subsidized rates. Camps in at full-fledged rates at the clinic, at schools, at where mothers meet and things like that. People started getting tested. Now that's again, now you are actually pushing to get tested. Now you've diagnosed. Now what next? Actually providing solutions for it. I remember till that time there were only 2 SKUs. There were only 2 strengths available: 100 microgram and maybe, I'm not sure, maybe 150 microgram. That's it. Hormonal therapy, I'm sure maybe you're aware, and Praful, it is a highly precision targeting. It cannot be done, basis the levels of the TSH, etc. It has to be micro-titrated. This company goes from 2 SKUs, goes and launches 10 SKUs. Right from 12.5 micrograms to 25, 37.5, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. For every TSH reading, you have a specific, brand available. So that's purpose in action, patient service, purpose, getting the branding in, celebrating it. We actually went and celebrated as an entire month. And now it's more of a fashion of getting a brand ambassador, even at pharma, right? I've seen a lot of pharma companies getting with brand ambassadors and things like that, which is a good awareness campaign. But getting a brand ambassador that way back then to really create this awareness that you need to get tested, and therefore this, so a huge respect for that brand and huge respect for what they've done so far, and actually really opened up this category. And today everyone actually goes and tests.
Absolutely love it, and I think that case study and these learnings are actually relevant across, even if you're working on a commoditized brand or you're working on an innovator brand. In either case, I think just solving the biggest challenge, and I like that you went beyond the brand, but trying to understand, provide services, initiatives that work from the perspective of solving the biggest challenge that the doctor faces while treating the patient, whether it's diagnosis, whether it's education, whether it's dose titration, and literally picked up each of those. And a lot of folks might say that, hey, we do patient support programs, but patient support programs in the industry, unfortunately, are still very, very ancient, because they still focus on what do I need to do to offer a cheaper product or etc., and have a connect with the patient or drive compliance, using the category, driving the category, and technology can really help you bridge the gap between the doctor and the patient in most categories at a very, very scalable level. So these are some great learnings for all of us, and a great note to end the conversation on. Thanks, Deep. Thanks, Mayur.